India IIT Forum. Thank you, Mr. Anirudh Roy, for having us here. Uh, it's always a pleasure to interact with Mr. Shiv Kumar, and I'm delighted that we also have on our panel Mr. Chandrasekhar Ghosh. You see, friends, for those of us who are not from IIT, and in fact, I think there are very few of us here who are not from IIT, the IITs were always some sort of a thing, which people aspired for. Some got in, and those who got in became very arrogant. And they thought that they don't need anybody else in the world. And so it's a very nice feeling that, finally all the IITs get together and tell a student of literature and history and arts, to talk to them about digital empowerment. Now, I am delighted. Very few occasions have given me as much delight. I enjoyed winning the first prize in Mood Indigo in the Mumbai festival. That was the only thing we from JNU could do, win them and beat the IITians at jams and debates, things which they think they can do, which I'm sure they just can't even think of that. But anyway, it's a pleasure to be here with you, and I'm delighted that I'm going to be speaking to you about a subject which is close to my heart. The subject being agriculture. I mean, it's sometimes one gets roped into certain things. One gets involved with certain subjects, and fortunately for me, within the IIS, I've had the privilege of working in the government of Uttarakhand, the government of West Bengal, and the government of India in various positions which have been connected to agriculture, rural development, horticulture, land reforms, and cooperatives. And therefore, one has been engaged in many of these discussions, many of these debates. And the good thing is that many of the things which were earlier considered to be very different, to be considered to be very difficult, because Shiv here knows that, many years ago we used to talk about national markets and things. There has been substantial progress on this side as well. But let me begin by saying that kudos to the Pan IIT alumni for, first of all, a remarkable vision statement on India. I mean, what India should be, what India can be. I mean, the hidden potential. I mean, unleashing this potential for India and of Indians is something which is great. It's there around us, but we need to remind ourselves every now and then that yes, here we are, here we have the potential. And that's the potential that we have within us, but is hidden. And so once in a while we need to be reminded that yes, you can do it. The fact that agriculture has been identified as the key growth driver for the economic transformation of Eastern India. Now, this is something which should have happened a long time ago. It has not happened. I'm glad that it's happening now. In some ways, the BGREI, which the Government of India initiated with Mr. P.K. Basu, was an attempt in this direction. But focus on East and on agriculture was missing. And this had impacted both equity and ecology. I come from Punjab, which gets 20 billion cubic meters of rain every year, gets another 20 billion cubic meters of water from the 3 rivers which are now left in Punjab, 2.5 actually. But every year we take out about 60 to 70 billion cubic meters of water to produce paddy and rice, which we used to send to Mokokchung in Nagaland and to feed Bengal also till about a few years ago. So every year we were depleting about 25 to 30 billion cubic meters of water. For the last 30 years we've been doing it. And now the results are for us to see. We're going to make Punjab into a Rajasthan. Hopefully, before that, we will get into diversification. Hopefully, before that, we might do other things. But then that's the ecological cost of doing it. And compare that to the 200 billion cubic meters of water that we get in Bengal, and we use only 60 billion cubic meters of water in Bengal. Right. So these are the sort of ecological concerns. We've actually never looked at agriculture from the point of view of ecology and equity. We've always looked at agriculture from the point primarily of let's produce, let's have enough to eat, because that's what a starving nation does, right? But now that you've crossed that hump, issues of quality have to come to fore, issues of equity and ecology have to come to fore, and I'm very glad that the IIT Kharagpur, not Kharagpur, all the IITs together have given us this opportunity to cogitate and think about these things. Benchmarking India for a global leadership. Now that's again something that you don't look at. I mean, we always were very happy to look at the Amul example, to look at the metro, to look at this, to look at that. And let's look globally. I mean, India, we have to look at the best practices everywhere in the world, and working together with governments, corporates, NGOs, and academia is something which is very good. Am I doing something? Okay, friends, I think let's first of all understand what is this animal called agriculture. What are we talking about? Now, I would go to the extent of saying that, can you give me a huh? Huh? Okay, that. So ultimately, it's the welcome to the Jugaad technology. Dynamic problem. Okay, ठीक. Okay, friends, the first thing is that agriculture is the basis, settled agriculture is the basis of state. I say this because before agriculture, you only had societies, you had communities. So agriculture was the first thing which could be collected, aggregated and collected by the sovereign. So the first granaries that came up, because you needed a permanent source of surplus to run your bureaucracy, to run your army, and to run your priestly class, because without these three things, you can't run a state. You can have a lovely society, but unless you pay us regularly, the state cannot exist, right? In order to get a regular salary, you need a permanent source, a permanent basis, and that was settled agriculture. Therefore, the relationship of state and agriculture is a very intimate relationship. Second, food security is the ethical foundation of sovereignty. A king or a queen who cannot ensure food security for its people has no right to exist. So food security is a sovereign, it's the imperative of the sovereign. So one is to say that you have to defend the territory of the land, to defend this, but a country or a formation which cannot ensure food security collapses. In fact, one of the reasons for the collapse of Soviet Union is not so much arms race and this and that, but also the inability of the Soviet state to feed its own people. That is one of the lesser known facts of history because, you talk about Cold Wars, but they're big, high things. But I think one of the root causes was also that the Soviet agriculture had collapsed completely. You see, closer home, many of us, I don't recall, I'm not that ancient, but many of us would recall that PL 480 when our sovereignty was affected because we did not have enough to feed ourselves. So these are very important. And when we talk about the right to food today, when we talk about the right to employment, that has to be understood in the context of what a sovereign has to do for its people. Can you have the next slide, please? Just 5 minutes on the background to how agriculture has been reflected in history. You see, in the Arthashastra, Kautilya says that 1/6 is the legitimate share of the king on the farmer's produce. 1/6. Which meant that prosperity was in the rural areas alone because only 1/6 of the produce went to the Raja's court from which the royalty and the nobility and the army and everything had to be fed. By the time Akbar had his revenue code under Todarmal, 1/3 was the share of the state in agriculture, which means that incomes or resources were moving from rural areas to urban centers. And therefore, it meant that there is a decline in rural incomes and thereby rural prosperity, and thereby the ability of the agricultural community to sort of further itself or to grow further. That also did not really break the back of India. What broke the back of India was Pax Britannica. Because till then, the king only said that you produce what you want to produce, I'll take this much. So whether it is 1/6 or it is 1/3. In fact, even in the Arthashastra, it is said that during the times of war, it can be 1/5. But in the Arthashastra says very clearly that not more than 1/4. So 1/4 was the moral imperative, that the farmer shall retain at least 75% of his produce. That is granted by the Arthashastra, says that this is what is legitimately yours. Normal times, the king will take 1/6. If there's a war, or there's a wedding in the family, or you want to celebrate something, maybe you take some more. What happened was that when the East India Company came to our country, they did not want just a share in the produce. They directed us that you shall produce what we want you to produce, and we shall take from you at the rates at which we decide we will take from you, and we shall send your produce wherever we want to send it. And therefore, the first famines in India started happening when areas which should have grown wheat and rice were growing opium, which is meant for consumption in China. for producing indigo, which helped the industry out there, to produce jute, to produce a whole set of other plantations. I mean, tea and coffee has become intrinsic to us, but I mean, we're not really a tea-drinking nation. 200 years ago, we didn't have tea. So it was the structure of state policy. So what I want to share with you is that everything apart, it is the nature of the state, the nature of the relationship of the state to the farming community that makes or mars a strong and a prosperous nation. There was, people call it the permanent settlement of Bengal, but I would like to say it was the permanent unsettlement of Bengal, what the British did to this part of the country. It actually finished Bengal in terms of all agricultural progress, 200 years behind schedule. 200 years behind schedule. So it's not that the farmer in Punjab is better or that the farmer in Bengal is lazier. We develop all these tropes, all these things, but we don't really understand that there is a reason for people being the way they are, for people responding to nature, for people responding to the political climate because of the circumstances that surround them. Then of course, this all led to a situation where the farmers' movement and distress was actually the foundation of the freedom struggle in the country. So you had Champaran, you had Mahatma Gandhi, Rajendra Babu studying it, documenting it, and coming to a whole set of reforms that would later on, I mean, all this experience led to the changes that we had post-independence. Next. And then you had independence, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, you know, the first set of political leaders from the country came from agrarian backgrounds, came from people who had a deep connection with the soil. And I would say that from the 60s to the 90s, we had the golden period of Indian agriculture. It was a period in which India actually transformed. And what did you have at that point of time? You had land reforms, phenomenal land reforms. Without land reforms, we could not have had the changes in production that we had. You had financial inclusion, NABARD came up, Kisan credit cards came up. You had support prices, you had MSP, we had seeds, we had farm equipment, we had fertilizers. We achieved self-sufficiency in agriculture. Success was celebrated, and as often happens, the heroes are forgotten. That's what happened with us as well. Next. Now, why bother with agriculture? The share is declining, and it will continue to decline. In all discussions, in fact, sometimes I say, thank God agriculture starts with A and Krishi starts with K. Otherwise, discussions on agriculture would be on the 18th item of the agenda. Now, sometimes, you know, because when the CM wants to review meeting, so first thing agricultural matters, so I mean, we are called first for discussion, but otherwise, it is not on the top priority. Thank God that we begin with A. Anyway, so 15% for the country, 18% for West Bengal. We're losing our share with every passing industry. The fact is that let's be clear about it. There's much more focus on the Make in India campaign. Many more advertisements on that, many more prime ministerial statements on that. We have statements on Skill India, statements on this. We are there because we have to be there because after all we're 60%. You know, we are important, but you know what I'm saying. Declining share of the sector in the union and state budgets. We're getting less and less when you compare it. In fact, when you look at the losses of Air India, you look at the losses of Air India or even the losses that Air India will make in a particular year, and you look at the budgets of the Union Agriculture Ministry and the state ministries, I think very much to talk about. In any case, and the worst thing about agriculture is that everybody gives a policy prescription on agriculture. Yesterday, Mr. Prashant Bhushan wrote an article on agriculture in the Indian Express. I mean, that really shook me as great. I mean, Mr. Prashant Bhushan is a great civil rights lawyer. He can write about many things. But Prashant Bhushan is also an expert on agriculture. So one of our problems is that everybody and anybody can get up and give us advice on how to do agriculture in our country. So that's another issue that we are grappling with. Anyway, let's move on. I want to run a little quiz. It's not meant for Shiv Kumar because he knows the answers. Okay. The district with the highest per capita income in the country. Yes, sir. Oh, no. No. Pardon me? Coimbatore, no. No, sir. No, sir. All right, let me give you a hint. It's up north. No, no way. No.
अब चलिए छोड़ दीजिए, छोड़ दीजिए, छोड़ दीजिए, छोड़ दीजिए. We can keep on guessing and you'll ultimately, the 600th person will come up with the right answer, so forget that. The district with the highest income in the country is Lahaul Spiti. They produce seed potatoes. That's also because it's very sparsely populated. But then, that's what statistics is all about. Just wanted to give you an idea that agriculture can work wonders at times. The most expensive legally produced agricultural commodity in the country. Again, Shiv Kumar is not entitled to answer this. Oh, you get it right. Thank you. Bandhan Bank, will you please give him a prize? Okay, he'll give you a free account or whatever, zero balance account you'll get. Okay. The only state which has won the Krishi Karman Award 5 times in a row. No. No. Yes, that's right. West Bengal. Again, let's have a round of applause on that. Okay. In fact, ever since its inception, ever since this is again one of the myths, like we never think that West Bengal is agriculturally a powerhouse. We never think about this. We think of Calcutta, we think about Rabindra Sangeet, we think about Calcutta, we think about Metro, we think about Rabindra Sadan, we think about Satyajit Ray. We don't think of the farmer of Bardwan or the farmer of Cooch Behar or any of these because they are actually people who have done the state very proud, but we don't think about it. It doesn't matter. Thank you very much. Your name, please? Swati, congratulations. Okay. Now, the commodity in which India is the largest producer, largest consumer, largest importer, largest exporter, and the largest processor. No, 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 no. Sir. Yeah, but we're not the largest importer of bananas, sir. The question, same item. I said the commodity in which India is the largest producer, largest consumer, largest importer. Let me give you a hint. No. Cashew nut. Okay. Now, you have to run this quiz because, attention spans, sometimes get all right. Now I'm going to come to the serious part of my presentation. Let's move on. Okay. Indian agriculture has done well, but our farmers have not. Our scientists have flourished, but our universities have not. Our production has grown, but our warehousing and logistics have not. Agriculture has not kept pace with services and manufacturing, hopefully by default and not by design. That's the saving grace. I only hope that the neglect of agriculture is by default and not by design, because if it was by design, Pan IIT would not have asked me to speak to you. Okay, now let's move on. Is this irreversible? Because it's a function of policy, institutions and technologies, and technology drives policy change because it's only technology which gives us options, which is what Madhukar said. Technology can reduce costs, it can bring transparency, and it can power institutions, and therefore we can reverse this trend. Let's move on. Next. Now, what is digital agriculture? What can it do? Is it cost effective? What are the evolving technology landscapes? The ICT usage in West Bengal? What can the alumni do to transform rural economies? Does Google Baba have all the answers? Google Baba doesn't have the answers. Google Baba can tell you, if you do a little bit of search, Google Baba has done wonderful things. I can talk about the naval strength of Maldives after a 4-hour search. You can go to a seminar on classical music. You can go to a seminar on Scandinavian rock paintings. You do about 6 hours of search and you can, make a reasonable presentation wherever you want. But Google Baba does not have the answers, thank God. Okay, let's move on. This is my definition of digital agriculture. That refers to digital technologies in agriculture to improve conversion of natural elements, including sunlight, into edible produce in the most optimal format for higher incomes. And after doing a lot of soul searching and after doing a lot of internet search and looking into the practical aspects, this is what I thought, because you cannot have digital agriculture. You can have digital technologies helping agriculture. And because Mr. Shiv Kumar is here and he knows much more about the subject, I'll leave that space to him. I was flipping through the notes which Mr. Ghosh is going to do, so I know that he also is going to talk to you about this. Let's move on. So, what happens? How do you manage all these things? You can either manage these things with anecdote, or you can manage these things with hard data. And when you manage things with hard data, there is a definite advantage that we have. So what is happening today is that whether it is the land record, whether it is the nutrient level, whether it's the seed varietal, whether it is rainfall, whether it is price volatility, we are just going by what happened last year, by what is likely to happen. And therefore, we are moving at fairly suboptimal levels. We have the potential, but we still haven't done our homework in a manner that we can, get everything together. It's like, you have all the ingredients, but unless you have a superb chef, you can't get the best layout. You have all these you have all these instruments playing together, but you need a conductor to get the perfect harmony. Next. So, what are the asymmetries that a farmer faces? And how do we address those asymmetries? To my mind, the asymmetries are asymmetries of information, the asymmetries of technology, of resource, and of institutional strength. Right? So these are the problems which the farmers have faced, and the problems which farmers will continue to face because of the structure of our land holdings, because of the political economy of agriculture, and because whatever we might say in these four walls, no political party will have the ability or the guts to address this land problem squarely in its face. So across the political spectrum, and therefore I can say with great confidence that across the political spectrum, no political party will have, today has the ability to call a spade and understand that land management in this country is in a big mess. And because that's in a big mess, and all agriculture, with the exception of some vertical agriculture that we do and some horizontal, showpieces that we do here and there, most of it is still on the soil, right? And soil is basically land-based. So that is a real problem. But digital agriculture has the potential of providing farmers, not just farmers, financial institutions. Farmers will get some information, that's important. But the Bandhan Bank also needs information. The Allahabad Bank needs information. The Allahabad Bank had information about the soil health card. If the Allahabad Bank had information about the credit worthiness, I'll use the word Bandhan Bank only.